your chairmanship. Indeed, it's a pleasure to follow both the Honourable Lady for Liverpool Riverside and the Honourable Lady for Birmingham Ladywood, who both, I think, very succinctly set out both the Jewish and indeed Muslim faith when it comes to regard to stunning and non-stunning of meat. But while I think it's always useful to have a debate upon a range of subjects, tonight's debate does seem to have a sense of déjà vu. We were here only on the 4th of November when we already discussed this issue. And again, I see certain faces around who contributed to the debate, and indeed some more who have come along today. Indeed, the Honourable Member for Kettering actually chaired that session. And so I am surprised that this issue has come back again so very quickly. And indeed, if former ministers and indeed current ministers don't know the range of views on this matter, I think we've made our views very clear over the years. But I just want to say a few words about why I certainly do not support the e-petition. Now, some people say, well, you have several hundred, and indeed several thousand, both Muslim and indeed Jewish constituents. So I would argue, well, I'm representing their point of view. But secondly, and the reason I feel very much against stunning, indeed, is because of my own views about animal welfare. I've been a vegetarian for the last 32 years. And I can assure you I'm not squeamish about killing animals. I believe that the welfare of animals does require on occasions for animals to die. And I have, in the past, recent past, actually put animals out of their misery when I felt that their quality of life, particularly rabbits, has meant that someone had to do something about them. So I feel that I speak with some authority on animal welfare. And indeed, the Honourable Member for Ilford South mentioned in his last intervention on my honourable friend for Finchley and Golders Green, that perhaps more people should go vegan or indeed vegetarian. But indeed, when the Honourable Lady for Bristol East mentions that each year that we should have a day in Parliament where people don't eat meat, sometimes I'm afraid she's ridiculed, and I think that's very wrong for people to do that. But in preparation for this speech, I looked at the amount of meat that is consumed, and we've already heard about the increase in numbers of a glut of meat upon the market. DEFRA has actually undertaken some consultation on the consumption habits of the British public, and they've looked at this for the last 20 years. And for the last year, for the figures are known, people consume about 190 grams of chicken each week. So you multiply that figure by 52, and that gives you a figure of about 9.8 kilograms, almost 10 kilos of chicken every year. Now, if broilers are slaughtered at 8 weeks, and then the average carcass weight is about 1.8 kilos, that means people are eating at least 6 chickens a year, or indeed some people are eating 6 chickens a year. But if you extrapolate those figures, you can come to the view that every year in the UK, approximately 2.6 million cattle, 10 million pigs, 14.5 million sheep and lambs, 80 million fish and 950 birds are slaughtered for human consumption. And I have to start asking, why are we consuming so much meat? But, and this is where I contradict some of my other colleagues here, Shechita only accounts for 1% of that total that I've just read out. And it's incorrect to say that Shechita enters the food chain. It does not. There are approximately 300,000 Jewish people in this country. And the amount of meat that is produced for them actually goes to the community itself. And in regards to food labelling, the Beth Din already label kosher meat. I'll give way to this.
I'm grateful to my humble friend for giving way. But if all kosher meat, all Shechita slaughtered meat is eaten by Jews, is he saying that they are eating the hindquarters? Because that is forbidden. So what happens to the hindquarters?
I take your point about all parts. I don't know if they're discarded. I don't know if the former minister knows that. Well, the minister may say that, but he hasn't come forward with any evidence to actually convince me of that. Now, some people may argue that slaughter is humane. If it is, well, I have to the minister.
Discussed this with Shechita, that everybody acknowledges that the hindquarters are sold normally on the open market. Most of it would be conceded, goes to Smithfield to be sold, possibly to caterers. But Shechita will also maintain that some of it goes to Halal markets as well, who also require non-stun.
Well, I apologise to the former minister because I have been corrected, and I can only say some of it may indeed go into the food chain, but not in the composition that was anticipated, meaning the whole carcass of an animal. So I think we're dancing on the head of a pin to say that some may go into the food chain. But I return to my point about what is humane slaughter. Now, some people say that it's humane slaughter if an animal is protected from unavoidable excitement, pain or suffering. And to do that, an animal has to be restrained and stunned, rendering it insensitive to pain and finally allowing it to bleed to death. I don't accept that. I have also been to an abattoir. I've also been around cattle when they've been killed in other places. And I have to say, when cattle go into any kind of contraption, including the back of a lorry, their stress levels increase. But I also want to talk not just about cattle, but other areas. Now, in preparation again for this debate, I read John Henley's article on the European pig industry in The Guardian that he produced in January 2009. And indeed, some animals receive a lifetime of distress and suffering. In that case, pigs were shown to be kept on slatted concrete floors, pregnant sows in cages so small that they couldn't move, piglets castrated without pain relief, and tails routinely docked to prevent animals from attacking each other. And this is never discussed, this food that is coming through the EU and entering the UK food chain. And it is peculiar that it is not discussed, perhaps because Muslim and Jewish people don't eat pork. But no one ever talks about those issues. We seem to be focusing on the same issues time and time again. Indeed, there are other issues that we should certainly spend time on. Beak trimming in hens, for example, mechanical misstunning of animals, horse fly grazing, puppy farming, chick culling on the basis of the sex, and cultivating endangered turtle meat in places like the Cayman Islands. But none of this is ever covered. Now, it's already been mentioned about the two petitions that are currently going forward, so I won't mention that again, as others already made the point. But I think it's worth actually saying that the small amount of time that the stunning, and indeed in opposition to the non-stunning petition, has come about in great haste and great speed, in contrast to the BVA petition, which has been taken almost a year to come to fruition. Well, I'd like to see the new BVA chairman, indeed, stop fanning the hysteria around this issue and actually look at what veterinarians are doing to ensure the welfare of animals in slaughterhouses. Now, I'm not going to talk about Shechita particularly, because that has already been covered. But I do want to make the point of why some of these methods have come about. And the reason they have come about is become the large-scale factory abattoirs, where the whole motivation is to speed up the process and indeed stop the animal thrashing around at the point of slaughter. So that's why stunning occurs. Now, this is only an issue that's been adopted by animal welfare organisations in an effort to, they claim, to raise levels of animal welfare. But the evidence in support of the animal welfare benefit is conclusive, and indeed mechanical methods frequently go wrong, leaving the animal in great prolonged distress. At the last debate when we had this, I raised this on the floor about the statistics from the FSA following misstuns. They showed, and the Minister agreed, that there was an unrealistic low number of misstuns that had been reported in the UK. And in 2011, only 6 cattle were officially reported to having been misstunned. And following these questions, the Minister, indeed, said that he conceded that these statistics are not complete and that they may only represent a fraction of the actual number, and the FSA will have to endeavour to improve its reporting methods in the future. So I oppose this on the basis that misstuns actually cause animals more pain and distress, and indeed does not improve the welfare of animals. But I also have some unease about this motion coming forward again so very quickly after the last one. I defend people's right to eat meat. I also defend my right not to eat meat. But I also defend my constituents' right to eat the kind of meat slaughtered in the way that they want it slaughtered. Now, some people have said that the way of stunning animals is an alien practice. It's not part of British culture. This is not something that we do in Britain. And it starts to produce a divide between people and the so-called British public. And I have a great deal of concern about that. Coming on the back of the Copenhagen and indeed Paris attacks, many of my Jewish constituents feel very concerned that they are not wanted in this country. Well, they're more British than some of the people who've signed this petition. They're the people at the end of their synagogue services always play God Save the Queen and sing along. You don't see that in other parts of society, more the pity. And indeed, I feel the same way about my Muslim constituents. When I visit them at the mosque, they don't talk about some of these issues that some of the far right claim that they do. They're more concerned about parking outside the mosque on a Friday so they can get not only to the mosque but also back to work afterwards. I will.
I'm aware that my local Muslim community is very concerned about this debate today because they don't feel it's really about animal welfare. They worry it's some kind of covert attack on them and their way of life. And I'm glad that so many of the speeches that we've heard today have actually confirmed that some of us at least, obviously animal welfare is important, but also communities' rights to slaughter meat in the way that they wish under the law is also important.
Well, I'm grateful for that intervention. And I think it illustrates, as I said, that some of the concerns of people in different communities are not those as portrayed by far-right organisations, but are very much about more normal things, including not only how they feed their children, but also how they look after their children and how they live their daily lives. And again, in preparation for this speech, I wondered, well, what are these British values that we are talking about that these practices are alien to? So I've had a look at the Department for Education and their promotion of the fundamental British values within UK schools. And it's very clear that it says schools should promote the fundamental British values of democracy, the rule of law, individual liberty, and mutual respect and tolerance of those with different faiths and beliefs. So surely this petition goes against that. Indeed, it goes further to say that further tolerance and harmony between different cultural traditions by enabling students to acquire an appreciation of and respect for their own and other cultures, encourage respect for other people, and an understanding that the freedom to choose and hold other faiths and beliefs isn't protected in law. Now, I feel today's petition and motion goes against that, and that we're going down a route of where we're asking people to choose on the basis of a religion on what kind of food that they eat. As I mentioned, there is labelling that already exists to indicate if food is kosher, and indeed I'm sure that the Muslim community can also introduce the same arrangements as well. But I feel very aggrieved on behalf of my constituents that once again we're returning to this issue, and many of my constituents do feel under attack as a result.